if you're working on someone and you're supposed to be on the left side for a woman, right side for a man, but you can't tell by looking at this person if it's a man or a woman. Or if it's a man who used to be a woman or a woman who used to be a man, and you can't tell where they're at on that continuum. Where do you start? At the head of the feet.
I start with the shotu.
Start with shotu and just see what happens. And just see what happens.
I have an answer.
No, I have an answer. No, here's the traditional answer. Because actually it's a traditional question. It's a traditional question. And the answer is, no matter what the gender, the person always gives you a gender. So even if they're truly androgynous, a true genetic hermaphrodite, they're not androgynous. True genetic hermaphrodites always either present themselves as a man or they present themselves as a woman. Okay? Transsexuals are not androgynous. They're not amorphous. They present themselves as a man or they present themselves as a woman. They don't present themselves as androgynous. Okay? So generally speaking, no matter where they are in the process, they present themselves, generally speaking, 100% as far as my experience goes, as something, right? And so what we do is we don't qualify it, we accept it. So even if I look at you and I know, by God, I know absolutely 100% you are a man, you are a man, don't need a freaking DNA test, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But on the mat, you're Susie. I start from the left side. If you're presenting to me that you're a woman, then I respect that, I acknowledge that, and I work from the left side. And so in Thai culture, that's a big deal. Because the subtle acknowledgments are a big deal. You know, it's like, because you can subtly diss someone without even trying, you know, and that's a big deal, you know. So, anyway, but in class, we don't follow that rule, okay? So you don't have to worry. And in fact, what I want to say in class is actually change sides as much as possible to help keep each other balanced. Because I don't want to just work on her, you know, left leg and his right leg like 500 times, you know, because that's what would happen if we stuck with it. Okay. So I started with puja, and I really just did a deep acknowledgement, right, of the space, of the person. I wished her well, and then I just took a minute to just check in the breath, and that's making a connection. And that listening, I want to say this also, just so I'm on record with it. Of all the skills that you bring to a healing session, I actually think listening is the most important one. It's not technical, it's not physical, it's important, right? Because if you really want to be intimate, if you really want to touch deeply and be touched deeply, listening has to be part of it, okay? The people that we treasure the most, the people that we care about the most in life, are those people who actually listen to us. If you want to say, what is a common thread, a common thing that you could identify about people that you deeply and conscientiously care for over the course of your life, one of those qualities is the fact that they listen. Okay? If people find you attractive over time, one of the things that they're bound to say about you over time is that you listen to them. That's one of the things that you offer them. Okay? So one of the fundamental techniques or tools to facilitate intimacy is intentionally listening to another person, which sometimes is proactive in the sense of you create the environment, the template, the possibility that some communication can happen. Now, the other thing that's kind of unique for us is we don't want to qualify where or what that communication is or where it comes from. Because it might be verbal, it might be nonverbal, it might be energetic. In other words, me really getting a sense of tuning into your breath, I'm learning something about you that's really intimate, that's very visceral, right? Viscera, organs, you know, literally has to do with your fundamental self at the level of your tissue, of your organs, right? And most people don't come that close, okay? A lot of people don't, we don't let a lot of people get close enough to know what our organs are up to, right? And even we think about sharing body function, I'm not just talking about having sex. You can have sex and not be intimate, right? Because you can have sex and there's no listening or communication being exchanged.
It's called marriage.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, you know, it's like sounds like you want to guarantee that you're not intimate is get married. But the point of it is, though, but if you are exchanging communication and information genuinely about your body function, and I just want to challenge you to think about this for a second, that is actually quite intimate, right? And a lot of times in medical situations, we're sort of forced to communicate about our body functions and about how our organs work. And you know what? It feels invasive, right? And everybody's on a need-to-know basis. And so we're not going to say one word more than we have to most of the time, right? Because even that medical practitioner, they're on a need-to-know basis. Why? Don't trust them. Why don't you trust them? Because there's no basis for trust, because you have no intimacy, you have no sharing and communication, and they haven't actually established that they even know who you are, much less have any idea what you're really up to in life and so on. So you're not going to share that information. Now, here I am in a session. I want to get to that place of some level of intimacy very, very fast. And the reason why is because I want our exchange to actually be genuine. I'm not just play acting a healing session. I want to actually do and participate in a healing session. So I'm not an actor on the stage of the healing stage, right? Like the equivalent of Shakespeare of healing. Okay, that really it has to be interactive to be genuine. And so I want to start, if I know that communication is important, then my taking that minute right at the beginning to establish that basis of communication and touching, and touch communication, sensing the energy, and listening to the breath, and wishing them well, and so on, that begins to be the template that everything else that I do is based on that. And guess what? I continue that listening until I'm done. Literally until I'm completely off the mat. Right? Now, the second thing, again, hard to talk about, easy to do. Second step that's part of every Thai session, beginning and ending. So I already know the beginning of a Thai session, that's puja. Guess what? The end of the session, I take a moment and I do puja again. Okay, so I leave where I came in. I came in a good way, and I want to leave in a good way, right? And also, I want to have a definite starting point. I want to have a definite ending point, because you've probably heard this before. Closure is important. That when you just walk away from someone right in the middle of a session, or what appears to be like for example, I had a massage in a pretty upscale spa, and I just realized at some point that my therapist had left the room. Okay? But I didn't know that the session was over. I didn't feel like the session was over. I just realized at some point that the therapist had left the room. Elvis has left the stage. Right? And I really felt dissatisfied with that. I didn't feel like there was closure. Like, I wish that just for 1 second they had just put a hand on me and said, "We're done. Thank you, we're done." Just that. Just anything to tell me we're done. Because then I felt like, then I waited. Because I didn't know, well, maybe they'll come back. Yeah. And then eventually, someone was like, "You have to leave now." Your session was done 15 minutes ago. You got to leave.
There's always that possibility you fall asleep while you're waiting for the person to come back.
I think they just wanted me to leave so they could get somebody else in. I was supposed to know that the session was over. But I thought, I'm an expert, and I didn't know. So they were just taking it for granted that everybody would just assume, because you're not being rubbed on now, that your session must be over, right? So I think there's some value in this idea of having puja at the end of the session. If nothing else, it gives you a point of reference as closure to start to gather yourself, to kind of reintegrate yourself into your sort of little